Subscribe for Reddit's controversial opinions. That's a right-wing talking point is not an argument. I have been getting so frustrated lately with political discussions. I consider myself a centrist, where each issue should be addressed on its own merits, and while I lean right where it comes to the authoritarian/libertarian debate, I'm very left-wing when it comes to issues like social assistance and compassionate society. But I keep running into this issue where I'll explain my stance on an issue and the response I get is some variation of "that's a right-wing talking point." Whether or not a stance is right-wing, which I often dispute, is irrelevant. Something being right-wing doesn't make it wrong any more than something being left-wing doesn't make it correct. The argument should stand or fall on its own merits. Every time someone throws this nonsense at me, that's their only response. It's not an argument. It's not a refutation, it's a dismissal. "Oh, people I don't like have made similar arguments, therefore you're wrong." My political alignment is completely irrelevant as to whether or not my argument is sound, and I'm sick of people acting like calling me right-wing is an argument. It's not. The mental gymnastics on Reddit deserves a spot in the Summer Olympics. It's really hard to respond to this without more concrete examples of what you're talking about. I agree that arguments should stand on their own, but I also know a lot of nonsense gets passed off as politically relevant. Like, is someone calling trickle-down economics a right-wing talking point, or something like Pete Saget or Obama being a Muslim? Are we talking fiscal policies or the deep state? I agree, but saying I'm a centrist because I judge each situation on its own merits is patronizing. I do that as well, but most of my views line up on one side. Whether or not a stance is right-wing, which I often dispute, is irrelevant. I agree, but I think you're putting too much weight on the right-wing part of right-wing talking point and not enough on the talking point part. A right-wing position isn't necessarily bad in itself. Right-wing talking point is basically a euphemism for information that has been skewed to serve a particular bias at best or outright propaganda that goes against the facts of the situation at worst. So when someone says that's a right-wing talking point, they're not dismissing the viewpoint necessarily, they're saying that the logic that brought you to the viewpoint is faulty, or wrong. Which brings us to: my political alignment is completely irrelevant as to whether or not my argument is sound. What, is this a serious statement? If you admit to picking political positions without regard for whether or not they're based on facts, I'm not sure that you can then get upset when people point out that you've picked political positions without regard for whether or not they're based on facts. If someone is using that take, they aren't open to discourse, they just want to point out they feel morally superior to you. Wow. The amount of upvote to comment ratio really shows that you pissed off a lot of people. Here's one of my most controversial Reddit comments of all time on this account. I thought it was weird how split the crowd was on the discussion that prompted me to say this, as I consider it to simply be objective fact. Don't be silly. Conservatism and progressivism are both incredibly necessary. Conservatism's job is to maintain the continuity of behaviors that have worked well in the past so society does not change too rapidly and adopt destructive behavior patterns. Progressivism is needed to nudge and prompt new behaviors when a change is needed to prevent the society from stultifying and stagnating. Conservatism unchecked is stagnation, and progressivism unchecked is an insane nosedive of self-destruction. Neither alone can make a healthy society. I look at it like this. Are you batting 1000 in your life's decisions? No. Well then why would you think the political party you vote for does? Just dismissing somebody's opinion because it's made by an opposing ideology is a terrible way to go through life. The problem is you are a centrist arguing with a left-wing liberal. To a true left-winger there is no center. Everyone to the right of them on any issue is a Nazi-loving right-winger descendant of Attila the Hun. You are cherry-picking a lot here for sure. The complaint people have isn't that it's right-wing, it's that it's a talking point. I am in the camp that most talking points, left, right or center, are designed as debate tactics and are mostly strategic concepts that are devoid of evidence. So when someone brings up topic X and the other person starts rambling cable news one-liners at them, well, the response is that's just a talking point. They are saying they want to get to the real substance of an issue instead of just yelling nonsense at each other. Like the comments of this thread, if you are being called out for parroting right-wing talking points in serious discussion, it means you are very likely copying already debunked ideas that many prominent Republicans are pushing to their base. That's not a good thing, because people were growing more and more tired by the day of having to explain how these same lies don't hold up to the sniff test to the multitude of people that bring it up. For example, I used to be more active on Drift Zero RS discords, and I enjoyed participating in the politics channel in particular. There were a variety of opinions and debates were usually fairly informative regardless of the side you were on, unless some dude parroting right-wing talking points came in and did his thing. It got to the point where, just to that one guy, we were playing the tracks on repeat because he kept insisting on defending the same lies that he heard off of places like Fox or Breitbart. In one comment, he tried to argue that Islam is mostly violent religion full of people who all believe terrible things. I asked him to cite some evidence, and the evidence he HD'd us was a Pew Research page that actually demonstrated the exact opposite of what he was trying to say. In short, if you're having people who don't want to engage with you because you're only repeating conservative talking points, you're probably dealing with people who are informed enough on the issues to recognize a lot of them debunked ideas that the right are disseminating to their base. Also, you probably didn't have to clarify you're a right-leaning centrist. Unfortunately, the only time I've had people clarify and insist they were centrists were when they were also right-leaning on far too many issues for them to honestly claim they could be a moderate or independent. Whenever I discuss politics, I always make people prove their assertions by providing evidence that what they say is true. I won't dismiss claims outright, but ask you to prove your point. If you can't, then it's just an unsubstantiated belief and nothing more. If you say stuff like tax cuts create jobs, which is widely accepted in right-wing circles, but it's empirically false, https://www.thebalance.com/do tax cuts create jobs 3306325, you'll get taken to task for it. I think people are tired of having to disprove talking points that are known to be false already, and that's why you're getting dismissed. What sort of things do you say when your talking points are dismissed? I've had far better debates with right-wing people than with left-wing people. Sometimes arguing that an argument is a talking point is valid, and other times it isn't depending on the context. If you say that the government is inefficient and therefore you distrust relying on the government, that should not be responded to with "that's a right-wing talking point," because it doesn't address the primary concern of the point. However, if you were to say that liberals are too concerned with PC culture and diversity over efficacy, then it makes perfect sense to respond by saying that it's a right-wing talking point. In the first example, the right-wing aspect is your faith in government, which is a subjective assessment, and can only be responded to appropriately with relevant facts. In the second example, you are asserting a fact about the world of which you are not the determiner. Unless you can prove somehow that other people value diversity over efficacy, then your point doesn't have much value. The only appropriate response is "that's not true, it's just a right-wing talking point." I get the same issue every time I talk about Israel. Hasn't all this been fueled by media? Haven't both parties taken advantage of this to their own ends? Corruption thrives wherever there is deadlock. Shit, we've been arguing over abortion for more than 50 years. Meanwhile, Dems continue to tax the middle class down to a fine powder while expanding government, and reps keep protecting corporations and dismantling any effective vehicles for resisting corporate greed. The population argues about whether giving children sex hormones is ethical. I'm not saying this was some master plan, but I bet the rich and the powerful are licking their lips and rubbing their hands at how wonderfully it's all come together for them. Here's a little secret: it's all fake news on both sides. Both sides lie. Both sides cheat. Republicans and Democrats alike can go fuck themselves. Yeah, we have this right-wing political party that has suggested a very good economic program, at least it sounds that way, that has both healthcare and will presumably bolster economy. I was talking about it with a left-wing classmate, without mention the name of the party, and he told me that it sounds like a very good program to him. Once I mentioned the name, he flipped out. He didn't even admit that just a moment ago, he was agreeing with them. Any refutation based on who made it or association with something unrelated is almost always fallacious. This is a classic ad hominem fallacy. I feel like people in your situation don't realize that some arguments or counterpoints that you genuinely believe or want answers to are constantly being made in bad faith by trolls and the alt-right. A while ago I had to debate for nativism, zero prep, so naturally all the points were slightly racist, and since it was a debate and the people holding and participating understood it was fine. Anyway, this one girl who was rebutting our points just said it was racist and that's her only rebuttal. I agree with this. I always get shot down and have had my karma ruined because I have a right-wing perspective and try to say things like, it's not so bad, or what the topic is based in missing info or straight up lies, and people hate me for it. When I comment, it's in political subreddits that aren't meant to be left but are very obviously and only left. Well, if you're an American that identifies as a centrist that leans to the right, then, to the rest of the Western world you are most certainly right-wing. LMAO, I'm willing to bet my virginity this will be posted on r/enlightened centrism. The right is in general pretty anti-fact and emotional, which is also shown in their talking points. It's a legitimate argument to point out the fact you're arguing from a place detached from reality.